Welcome to Murder and Everything Else. My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl, and Joy and I are two very old friends who are going to talk about murder and everything else. So, Joy.
So, Cheryl.
Okay, you know how I mentioned, I don't know if it was on the last episode or the one before that, or both the last episodes, but I've been listening to Bad Friends, right? I've been watching their YouTube channel and listening to their podcast. So when I'm in the car, I'm listening to the podcast because obviously I can't watch YouTube while I'm driving. Although, I mean,
Well, you
I might be able
can.
to.
I've seen
Yeah.
people do it.
Oh, I've seen it too, but it's, it's frowned upon. So I
Right.
listened to them. Okay. So in my brand new to me, my Honda Passport, which is pre-owned. Okay. So I canceled my Sirius XM. No shade to them, but I don't need it. Nobody needs it anymore, right? We can just listen off of our phone. And I had a cord. I would use the cable, like the charging cable, and I would plug it in and it would connect, right? And then,
Right.
just like everything, like, do you remember when we had VCR? I remember my first VCR, it actually had a cord from the VCR to the remote. Do you remember that? Or I don't know if you had
No.
one of those. And then, of
No.
course, eventually, like the phones, it went cordless, right? And then you go to a smartphone. So I'm plugging it in like old school into my phone so that I can play Bad Friends and whatever else I listen to. Now, I have to, before I go further, I have to explain that Bad Friends is very raunchy. It's super raunchy. It's
Right.
these two guys, an Asian guy, Bobby Lee, and an Italian. I think he's not Italian. He's got red hair and his name's Andrew Santino. The last name sounds Italian. But it's just two guys. It's like locker room talk. I mean, okay, and you didn't say our disclaimer yet, but this is not for kids. So they're talking about orgasms and blowjobs and hand jobs. And I mean, they're just crass, okay? So going back to the cord on the phone to plug it into my, the USB port when I'm in my car, I think, you know what, this cord is getting in the way. I'm gonna get a wireless one. It's it's a Bluetooth thing. You stick it in the USB port, and then
Uh,
your phone comes on. Whatever you're playing on your phone. Well, what I was doing was I would turn off the car. So I'm listening to them talk about orgasms and doggy style and blowjobs and all this stuff.
God.
And instead of taking, so what I learned is that even if you hit pause on the show, for some reason, when I would get out of the car, the engine is off, okay? I would get out of the car and I'd be walking away, and I'm close enough still, I guess, for it to still connect. And they would come blasting out of the car talking about all this racy stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like trying to find my phone in my bag because now it's in my bag. And I'm like
No.
hitting pause. And so I did that the other day, and the doors were open, and I was like 10 feet away, and their voices came on, and they were talking about all this X-rated stuff. I was so embarrassed. So now I've learned that I have to pull. I know it's not meant to be pulled out every time. I mean, that's supposed to be the convenience of leaving it in,
That's
but
what
I have
she
to.
said.
Jesus Christ. But I have to if anybody else is going through this, please write in. But I pull the USB thing out every time because it would start connecting when I wasn't near the car, and all this bad, bad, bad language would be blasting from my car. It was so
That's funny.
fucking funny. Oh my
Well,
God.
and on
Anyway,
the tail end of that, friends, just a quick reminder, like Cheryl said,
this is
very
not
quickly
for kids.
interspersed in the middle of that this is not for kids, all right? Oh my God, that's
Oh
so
my God.
funny.
Oh my God, I was so embarrassed. And it would happen at home when I pulled into the driveway, and I'm just like, oh
God,
my God.
that
Anyway,
is too funny. Let's head into some updates for those of you who spend a lot of time on the socials. This is really, guys, this is really a labor of love for Cheryl and I, because remember, like, while I spend some time on the socials, Cheryl doesn't really spend any time on the socials.
Nope.
Um, so we have expanded to TikTok. You heard it here first. And not only are we on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, which is now called X, which I refuse to refer to as X, I still call it Twitter, and YouTube, we are now on TikTok, and we have a 17-year-old TikToker who is creating some dope ass shit for us. So go out to TikTok. I mean, you don't have to go out. You can just stay at
Oh my
home.
gosh. We are
But
so
go,
old. I said that in the very beginning. And when I meant we're
go,
old friends, it's because we've known each other a long time and
oh
we're
my
just
God.
old. You would
Guys,
think
go go
we
to
just
TikTok
never
and
retire.
see us. See us today on TikTok. You can actually see what we look like on TikTok.
Oh
It's
my
kind of
God.
funny. And stand by. Maybe in 10 years we'll figure out how to do video podcasting. I mean, really, I really we tried really hard to stay away from TikTok. We really did. No shade to TikTok at all. It's just
Well,
someone's got to manage that. And it turns out this 17-year-old who lives in my house is the perfect person.
she's got the energy and the knowledge. Something that
Uh,
you and I don't have.
Exactly. And apparently, what I posted on TikTok, she said, was lame AF. So we had to remove that, and she had to create something that was better. And I guess
Oh,
it's working because our listens have gone up since we posted that, guys. So
awesome.
yeah, go check out our TikTok, but even more importantly, check out this podcast. Do you have any Cheryl, do you have any updates?
Um, I don't. Other than that, I've learned to take out my USB from the from the port so
She,
no one can hear
she's
the racy
she's learned
shit
how
that I
to
listen to. You
she's
know,
learned how
it's
to
so
take that thing and stick it out of somewhere.
you know what's so funny, Joy, is I don't people have this image of me that I'm super like proper because I had someone at work say, "Oh, they were watching this show," and he was like, "But it's really kind of, it's really kind of raunchy." And I was like, "Oh, you don't know me." I love like Horrible Bosses, which is 10 times worse than the show that he was talking about because I did go check it out. But
Horrible
anyway,
Bosses was funny.
oh,
Ooh.
the second
I
one,
gotta tell you, that guy, the first one, that guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I don't know
oh my
his name.
God, Charlie Day,
Oh
Charlie Day.
my God.
Uh,
When Jennifer Aniston is trying to have sex with him in the back of the car, and remember,
uh,
is it, or he's driving or something's happening,
well, I know
and
in the
he,
dentist's office, she's in because he's a dentist, right? And she comes
oh,
in,
that's what it is.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
so freaking funny. I was screaming. It was so funny. Anyway,
it's so funny.
um, hey,
Ah,
so let's head into shout outs. I want to shout out Flexible Jobs. I know I've touched on it briefly. And when I say flexible jobs, those of you out there who have flexible jobs know exactly what I'm talking about. I had a job that I worked from home for almost 5 years. And for those of you who know me really well, you know that I was able to go back and finish my degree after taking a 32-year hiatus. I started it in 1987 and I got my diploma in 2019. But if I had not had this flexible job, I would not have been able to do that. My job allowed me to take the time out because I had to drive 45 minutes to a campus and 45 minutes back home for one flippin' statistics class that, by the way, I got a freaking A in, and it was hard. And but I wouldn't have been able to do that without this flexible job, and I appreciated it so much. I also happen to have a flexible job right now, and I am so appreciative that I have a flexible job. Um,
mhm.
we've been going through a lot in our lives recently, personally, and it allows me to be so much a better person to have flexibility at my job. So, shout out to flexible jobs. You people out there who have them, you know that you have them, you love your job. You'll probably put up with whatever because you know that not everybody has a flexible job.
Right. Actually, I am going to piggyback on that and talk about jobs and how great they can be. Because I don't have a flexible job necessarily, but um, my boss and the higher ups, our management team is incredibly flexible. They're very accommodating with their employees, and the best news ever, they're letting Callie be come with me to work whenever I work, and they also made her their mascot, which was
Oh,
really incredible.
that's so
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, and she's so cute, and it's amazing because it's almost like she knows she has to be good there because she's quiet as a mouse. But on the car ride over there, she's barking the whole time. She's barking the whole
Oh
time.
my God.
And then when
She's
we leave
getting
the
she's getting amped up for it.
I guess, but then all she does is sleep in her little pink bed. And
Oh,
she only gets up when I walk away.
she's
She
all worn
follows
out.
me. She's just follows, to see where I'm going, and it's so sweet. But as soon as we get in the car to go home, she starts barking. All I know
Oh
is I'm
my God.
glad it's not the other way around because she wouldn't be
I
able to
think
come with me.
I think it has something to do with maybe she doesn't like the way you drive.
That could
She's
be
all,
it.
"You're a terrible driver. Ruff, 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 ruff." Oh my God, that's so funny.
Oh.
Okay, guys, on that note, I need to head into our letters from our listeners.
Oh God, I can't
And
wait.
for those of you who have been living under a rock, that's my favorite thing to say lately. Um, if you go to Spotify, you actually can, and you click on the episode that you're going to listen to. It says there's a little thing that says, "What did you think about this episode?" And you can click on it and leave a comment. I get a notification about 24 hours later that says, you got a comment. I can approve the comment for publish, or I can not publish the comment. And until this week, we had only had 2 comments, and we had read those comments on previous episodes. And one of the comments was from Jen T. Remember, Jen T said, "OMG, I was dying laughing." And we couldn't figure out who Jen T was, but thank you, Jen T, for your comment. That was such a fun comment to have. The only other comment was back on episode 42, and it said, remember, it was by Jay Blair, and it said, "Don't like the show, poor conversation and dull presentation." And we were really excited about that because, when you start getting the hate comments, it means you've arrived. But
You were
I
really
just,
excited. I
I was
was
so
less than thrilled.
excited. But I just want you guys to know that we got a comment. I just saw it today, right before we started recording, and it's from Gabe, and it was posted
Oh.
2 days ago, and it says, "I laughed, I cried, it was better than cats." So
That's
for those
awesome. Oh my God.
for those of you who don't know, Gabe is my husband. I said to him, "You should probably post a comment," and then I completely spaced it. And so that was his effort. So anyway, that's letters from our listeners. Thank you, Gabe, for your comment. That is forever published on Spotify. And um guys, this week we're heading right back to murder. Cheryl has prepared something really, really, really detailed and also thought provoking and a real conversation provoker. I did a little bit of like legwork and asked some people questions on this. So Cheryl, take it away. I'm really excited about this week's episode.
Okay, so this has been highly publicized. It's been in the media. lately, but like as Joy likes to say, for those of you who have been living under a rock, um, the Oxford High School shooter, Ethan Crumbley, his mother Jennifer was found guilty of manslaughter. So, we're going to talk about that. We're going to discuss parents being held accountable for their children's actions, which I want to know how you feel. I don't have children, so I can only hypothesize. Well, you too. It's not like you're. Hello?
Hello?
Okay, I don't know what
Hello?
happened to my screen. We're doing a lot of hellos in this. Okay. Oh my
Hello?
God. It's
Hello?
terrible.
Hello?
Okay. Okay, so we're going to go in depth what happened with Ethan and his parents. Well, specifically his mom. Okay, so on November, oh, hold on. My sources are Wikipedia, the 74, CNN, and the Washington Post. On November 30th,
Also, like,
2021.
I just wanna jump in here really quickly. If you
Mm-hmm.
have been involved in an active shooter situation and you're triggered by that kind of content, just remember, like, you might want to sit this one out, okay?
Yeah. Good. Okay, so on November 30th, 2021, a mass shooting occurred at Oxford High School in Oxford Township, Michigan. Ethan Robert Crumbley, age 15, armed with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, murdered 4 students and injured 7 people, including a teacher. Authorities arrested and charged Ethan as an adult for 24 crimes, including murder and terrorism. Ethan pleaded guilty to all of the charges in October of 2022, and on December 8th of 2023, Ethan was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole plus an additional 24 years.
Ugh,
Just 3 days before her 15-year-old son carried out the mass shooting, Jennifer Crumbley was captured on security camera leaving a shooting range with a handgun in tow. She had just taken her son out to target practice in what she described on social media as a mom and son day, testing out his new Christmas present, a 9mm pistol the high schooler referred to online as my new beauty. The images were pivotal to an unprecedented conviction on February 6, 2024, that legal scholars predict could create a new tool for prosecutors as the nation looks for ways to stem a record setting uptick in mass shootings. She's the last person we see with that gun, prosecutor Karen McDonald said. Jennifer Crumbley is the first parent to be held directly responsible for a school shooting carried out by their child, turning on its head a bedrock legal principle that people cannot be held responsible for the actions of others. This is the last picture we have of that gun until we see it murder 4 kids on November 30th, and the person holding it is Jennifer Crumbley, McDonald said before a jury convicted the mother on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, one for each of the students her son gunned down. The
man.
prosecution argued, yeah, the prosecution argued Jennifer Crumbley is responsible for the deaths because she was grossly negligent in giving a gun to her son Ethan, who was 15 at that time, and failing to get him proper mental health treatment despite warning signs. Over a week of testimony, law enforcement officials, school employees, shooting victims, and those who knew Jennifer Crumbley testified for the prosecution. However, the defense argued the blame lay elsewhere, on her husband, James, for improperly securing the firearm, on the school for failing to notify her about her son's behavioral issues, and on Ethan himself, who planned and carried out the attack on his own. Defense attorney Shannon Smith said the case was dangerous for parents everywhere. Jennifer Crumbley took.
I just wanna jump in here.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, did you watch this on did you watch this case? Like, is it published out there on YouTube that you can sit and watch it?
Oh, yes. Her case, her trial.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You can go to watch it on
So you
YouTube.
watched the whole thing?
I did not. I watched parts of her cross examination.
It's so interesting that the defense attorney said the case was dangerous for parents everywhere when what's dangerous is a 15-year-old bringing a gun to school
With
with the
mental health issues.
yeah, with the intent on killing fellow students.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because um I, I feel like what that defense attorney is doing is pitting, the parent versus the child in this situation, which to me it's like, I mean, a 15-year-old only gets money for something like that from one of two places, a job or their parents. I mean, it's when I was 15, I had a summer job. I didn't
Mhm.
make enough money to buy a 9 millimeter, whatever.
I know.
I mean, I
It's
all I cared about was going to the movies and getting a Slurpee.
yeah, and
Seriously.
yeah, I know. I think it's yeah, we can discuss it later, but yeah, I
It's-
I know what you're saying. Um, Jennifer Crumbley took the stand in her own defense and, in a remarkable moment, expressed no regret for her actions. She was asked on cross examination if she would have done anything differently. And she says, I've asked myself if I would have done anything differently, and I wouldn't have, she testified. Jennifer testified that after the gun range visit, she put the gun case in her vehicle's trunk in the area where the spare tire is. Once home, she took the ammo inside but left the gun case in the locked vehicle for a couple of hours until her husband came home, and then he took the gun case inside, she testified. I just don't feel comfortable with it, she explained, of leaving the gun in the car. That's his thing. First, the prosecution alleged she knew or should have known about Ethan's deteriorating mental health issues. For example, he sent a series of texts to her in the spring of 2021 in which he said there was a ghost or devil in the house and pleaded for her to respond, but she did not do so. He also texted a friend that he had told his parents about the hallucinations and asked for help, but his mother laughed at him. In a journal found by police, Ethan Crumbley wrote that his parents wouldn't listen to his pleas for help. He said, I have zero help for my mental problems, and it's causing me to shoot up the school, he wrote. However, in her testimony, Jennifer said the texts about a ghost were just Ethan messing around, part of an ongoing joke about their house being haunted. She also said his text to a friend was false and he had never actually asked for help. But they can actually, I mean, this is no surprise to anyone, but you can go back and look at texts from a while ago, especially if they're subpoenaed and they
yeah.
have they have the texts. I saw a program or listened to a program that, like, when he was 10, he was often left at home. And he was about 10 and he was scared and he texted her because he wanted her to come home and she never responded. It's not like
Wow.
she was an emergency room doctor and she was doing an operation all night and she just couldn't
What did
respond.
she
I
what
mean,
did she do?
she would be out. So I know there were times where the parents would be out. Just I don't want to say partying, but they would be out on social, just a social thing.
Huh.
And she just never responded. I mean, if you already
Wow.
having mental health issues,
That really breaks my heart.
I
And
know it's
the
so
reason it breaks my heart is because when our my kids were little, we didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't afford sitters and stuff. Um, one of us was always there because we had a kid that didn't sleep through the night readily and would have night terrors. And we just wanted to make sure that, like, when that child woke up, that that child had the support they needed,
yeah.
that mom or dad would be there. And I've heard of a lot of different situations where people trust the fact that there's security cameras in the home or around the perimeter, or that they feel safe. I remember when my kids were little, we knew people who would, like, lock the kids in the house, put them to bed, lock them in the house, and then they'd go next door and drink with the neighbors. And I
Mm.
remember being very uncomfortable with that because I remember thinking, what happens if house fires are so fast? Or what happens,
Mm-hmm.
if the camera's not working, or what if the child gets sick and vomits? I mean, I just felt very uncomfortable with that. So it makes me
Well, and
sad
I,
that he would text
yeah,
her, and
and
of
she never
course,
responded.
we talked about this several episodes ago, that a lot of mental health issues stem from childhood trauma. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just feeling abandoned, and like
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't, being responded to, could have been a real childhood trauma incident for him.
Good, definitely. Like, just, I mean, it's not even a matter of you feeling like, okay, well, they're right next door. i- i- and nothing's going to happen. It's just, what if they wake up and they're in the middle of the night and they just listen? When I'm by myself, sometimes I wake up and I start to get freaked out. I don't know, like the anxiety of whatever just starts creeping in. Imagine if you're a young child and you wake
Oh
up and your
yeah.
parents aren't there and you need to be comforted. Like, that would really bother me.
Yeah,
I don't even want to leave my dogs home. I
I
mean, not to
know.
compare the two
I know.
dogs, but it's the whole anyway, yeah, it's just it's unbelievable. He was 10, like that's too
So
young to
little,
be by himself. And then,
it's so little. But I know a
you
lot
know,
of people that do it. And like I know people whose kids get off the school bus and walk home, and they have a key and they let themselves in, and they stay by themselves until the parents come home from work at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and they're getting home at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So they're
mhm,
home for a while by themselves, and they're coming into an empty house where nobody's been all day long. So
yeah.
this is not new, and I know that there are guidelines for children if they have a younger sibling, so the age is 12. So like if the police were to do a wellness check and there was a 10-year-old watching a 5-year-old, I don't but I know children as young as 8 years old that do that, that let themselves, and that seems really, really young.
Yeah, and then if you give them a tool like the cell phone to reach out to you, and you don't respond, it's pointless.
Newsflash, people say they're giving their children the phone so that they can reach out to them and they can communicate with them. The fact of the matter is they're giving the children the phone so they don't have to interact with them most of the
So
time.
they don't have
That
to.
Yeah, that excuse that they're doing it so that, I'm giving my first grader a phone so she can call me when she gets home. That I call bullshit on that, and a big loud bullshit. All right. Big and loud.
Yeah.
It's an
Uh,
opportunity to it's an opportunity for the parents to go, like, why don't you go play on your phone and leave me alone? People don't want to interact. That's
yeah,
what it is.
it's well, but that's
It's
mm,
replaced the
I
babysitting. It's replaced the babysitting that the television did in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s.
I just
And
couldn't go out and have a good time knowing my very young child who shouldn't be home alone um is scared and needs me. I just don't understand not responding at all, like to
well,
comfort
that's why
him,
I always say any asshole can have a kid.
Yeah.
You
Oh my
know,
God.
I have a lot of respect for people who are like, you know what? I don't really think that having kids is in my wheelhouse. And so I'm just not going to do it. But any asshole, I used to always kind of joke around and say, in order to have a child, you should have to take a physical endurance test and then like a written test, like a mental, you know, like, uh, whether or not to show whether or not you actually have like the
Mm,
brain power to have a child. Because, you talk to people and like that YouTube woman who had her kid eating these like super hot Korean noodles, who like came for me because I posted that what she was doing was akin to child abuse.
mm.
And I was like, why is this woman being allowed to post this crap? And then, I know we're going to talk about it at a later date, but the whole Ruby Frankie thing, where all these children are basically being grossly abused by the parent, and it's allowed to continue. I gotta say, I don't believe the father didn't know what was going on, and I'm sure he's going to have to like go through some scrutiny right now. But it's like, I mean, she got a bunch of years in prison. I don't think she'll ever be around those kids again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that one too. Um, so the Crumbleys were called into school for a meeting, and a school counselor testified he recommended the parents take their son home from school to get um, immediate mental health treatment. The Crumbleys declined to do so that day because they didn't want to miss work. So the group agreed to keep Ethan in school for the rest of the day. They also did not mention to school employees that they had just purchased him a new gun or his previous hallucinatory texts. Shortly after the meeting, the teenager took a firearm out of his backpack and opened fire on classmates, killing Hannah St. Juliana, Tate Meyer, Madison Baldwin, and Justin Schilling. Andrew
So
Smith, the CEO of the real estate company where Jennifer Crumbley worked at the time of the shooting, testified that she would have been allowed to leave for the day if she needed to take care of her son. Because they said they had to go back, they couldn't leave work. Your son
mm,
is exhibiting very, dangerous behavior, and they said they couldn't leave work. For gun
crazy.
control
They
advocates
didn't.
and
I don't think they wanted to leave work.
No, they didn't, because her boss is saying she would have absolutely been able to leave if
Yeah.
she knew that her son needed help. For gun, yeah, I'm sure she didn't even mention it to her boss. For gun
Ugh.
control advocates and the parents of children killed in their classrooms, the landmark trial's outcome was welcomed. Craig Schilling, the father of victim Justin Schilling, told a local TV station, "The conviction is quote unquote definitely a step towards accountability." About three-quarters of school of shooters obtained their guns from a parent or another close relative, according to a 2019 U.S. Secret Service report. In about half of the cases, the guns had been readily accessible. The conviction, in many ways, a watershed moment that hinged heavily on portrayals of Jennifer Crumbley as a neglectful mom who paid more attention to her horses and an affair than to the son she'd gifted a gun to as he struggled with his mental health and exhibited violent behaviors. The shooter's father, James Crumbley, is scheduled to face a similar trial next month. So just going back, James and Jennifer Crumbley were charged on December 3rd, 2021, with involuntary manslaughter for failing to secure the handgun used in the shooting. After failing to appear for their arraignment, the parents were the subjects of a manhunt by the U.S. Marshals. Do you remember that? They went on
They
the
were on
run,
the run.
which
Crazy.
I mean, that is so
Crazy.
crazy.
Like,
Uh,
if there was any question in anyone's mind as to whether or not they were guilty or innocent, nothing says guilty like packing your shit up and getting like running away. Let's go on the lam and see if
yeah,
anyone will find us.
unbelievable. They were like found in a warehouse or something. They were caught and arrested in Detroit on December 4th. And lawsuits were filed against the school district, Oxford Community Schools, starting on December 9th. They alleged negligence by school officials towards warning signs exhibited by Ethan leading up to the shooting. We're going to have to discuss this. Like, what I want to know what you think about the school's responsibility, the parents, all these other entities.
Well, I
The
will
Crumbly,
say that the teachers are mandatory reporters. So, you have to if just like if they see signs of child abuse, they're mandatory reporters. And I'll tell you that it's like, I mean, obviously it sets off a chain of events that you no longer have control over because then they call CPS, then they have to come in and they have to call the parents and they have to separate the child from and there has to be a pending investigation, and then it has to be determined whether or not it was the parent. So there's all these things that happen. So the thing that I don't understand is, I mean, why why didn't the school I don't know. I would think the school officials meeting with the parents and saying this child is in crisis, why didn't they
they
try to
did.
call a hospital and see if
Oh,
there
yeah.
was a place that the hospital could, like a psychiatric place, could take him and do an evaluation. I don't know.
Yeah, because the teacher saw him, he was caught looking for ammo on his cell phone. And so it was reported, right? And then they called the parents, and Jennifer texted him, LOL, I'm not mad at you, just don't get caught. Like,
So she
what?
couldn't text him when he said, "I think that I hear voices and see
Right.
ghosts in
But
my
she could
house."
text,
But LOL, don't get caught Googling ammunition at school.
hmm. And then he was also, the teacher found that he had drawn these very disturbing images of blood, and saying, that he, something about, the world is this and that, and he wants to end it, and this, and that's when the call was made to them, and they said they couldn't leave work. And this is why the school officials are being charged too, because like you said, why didn't they call a mental health someone? I mean, they just left him there in school, and he went, and there's a picture of his backpack in one of the stalls of the bathroom, where he put all his stuff down, but got the gun and went back in the classroom.
That's
So,
just crazy.
um the Crumbley case is one of several recent examples where prosecutors sought to hold parents accountable when their children carried out what once were unthinkable acts of violence. In 2023, a Virginia mother, Deja Taylor, 26, was given a 2-year prison sentence for felony child neglect after her 6-year-old son brought a gun to his Newport News elementary school and shot his first grade teacher. In a separate prosecution, the mother pleaded guilty to using marijuana while owning a firearm and for making false statements about her drug use. And I saw a clip of her walking up the steps of the courthouse, and she looked so indignant and so defiant. Like,
Well,
uh,
I don't like the comment about I don't like the thing about the marijuana use with regards to fall. I mean, one of the things I feel like we need to do is, and this is a totally separate episode, is we need to destigmatize marijuana use and like the words we use, and also remove it from, like, it's not like methamphetamine, it's not like cocaine, it's not, the worst thing that happens is you might eat too many Cheetos and can't get off the couch. But I will say that I listened to an interview with that teacher, and the teacher was very clear that this 6-year-old boy was in crisis. Um, the child neglect that the child had experienced emotionally and mentally had started well before that 6-year-old started, in this teacher's classroom. And I'm talking about like parental neglect. I'm talking about not having, they call those years the formative years. It's the years before
mhm,
your child starts school. And that's when your children learn things like empathy, sympathy. They learn how to say thank you. They learn how to be appreciative. They learn how to share. They learn how to ask properly for things. They also learn how to use words of gratitude like please and thank you and you're welcome. They learn affection. They learn that they have safety and love. This little boy or little, yeah, who shot his first grade teacher,
mm.
there were other things happening. I mean,
Oh, definitely.
it doesn't take a Dr. Phil who I'm saying that tongue in cheek because I think the guy's a complete asshat. But it doesn't take a Dr. Phil to diagnose this kid. This kid had other problems. And the teacher's hand is forever maimed. I mean, the gun practically blew off her finger, and like,
Ah,
she's not going to be able to use that hand.
mm,
So, I mean, and I don't care if the mother was indignant. She needs to get off her high horse. Your
I
child did
know.
something that's like
Yeah.
that is at the age of 6 that that is egregious. Like, hi, it's called humble pie. You might want to
That's
take a taste.
that's, I think, something that Jennifer Crumbley didn't do herself any favors. She had a chance to show some remorse and humble herself when she was asked, would you have done anything differently? But no, she stood her ground and was like, I wouldn't have changed a
Yeah,
thing. I'm like, how can you say
exactly.
that? In a separate prosecution that may have actually laid the groundwork for the Jennifer Crumbley case, an Illinois father, Robert Cremo Jr., pleaded guilty to misdemeanor reckless conduct on charges that stem from a shooting carried out by his son at a 2022 Highland Park Independence Day parade, which left 7 people dead. That case centered on how his son, who was 19 at that time, obtained a gun license. At the time of the massacre, the gunman, Robert Cremo III, was too young to apply for a firearm license, so his father sponsored his application despite knowing his son had a history of behaving violently. Several months before the attack, a relative reported to police that the teenager had a large collection of knives and had threatened to kill everyone. The state prosecutor said the father's guilty plea should be a beacon to others, that parents can be held accountable for their actions of their children. Okay, so your thoughts.
Well, I want to just go back to the beginning where you said that in a remarkable moment, Jennifer Crumbley took the stand in her own defense and expressed no regret for her actions. She said, I've asked myself if I would have done anything differently, and I wouldn't have. And
Uh,
I think it speaks volumes to what kind of empathy she had as a mother, and
or did
also,
not have.
yeah, or didn't have as a mother. And also, there are people out there who don't give two shits about their kids. They really don't. And they just figure, you know what, you're on your own. And you know what? Um, okay, maybe it works for some people to just cut the kids loose, and pretend like they don't exist, but and not respond when they're in crisis or need help. But I don't know. I just feel like all it did was I I feel like she maybe she did herself like I don't know. She made her bed, so now she has to lie in it, and that is now obviously translated into a prison sentence.
Right.
So,
I and she shows no empathy for the children that were killed, the parents of those children. Like, uh,
I mean, can you
if
really
I
blame Ethan? Can you really blame Ethan's deteriorating mental health issues? I mean, look at the kind of empathy and the sympathy and the kind of response that his mother gives to,
right.
four kids. And here's the other thing, guys. I I gotta just go back to like the whole bullying thing because I know we did another episode and we talked about, back in my day, bullying was, hey, give me your lunch money.
Right.
But we didn't really like. Okay, I'm sure there was bullying going on when I was in high school. I wasn't that aware of it because I went to a really small high school and because the word bullying wasn't really used a lot.
Hmm.
It was we didn't, everybody brought their own lunch, so there was no stealing of lunch money that happened. Um, I just, I mean, I know that there are kids that don't enjoy school. The pandemic made that worse because they were isolated. There maybe it causes a lot of anxiety and, it sounds like this kid was going through a mental health crisis, but at the same time it's like I'd never been in a situation where I was so distraught or so upset or so triggered by, maybe popular kids or kids that were pretty or whatever, or like, somebody who was dating a guy maybe that I liked, that I would have ever considered committing a violent crime.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And also I'll tell you that like I didn't have a real warm, fuzzy situation at home either. So I don't know what the difference is, Cheryl. I don't know. I feel like maybe I know sometimes people say we were tougher. Our parents didn't coddle us as much. They didn't buy us everything. We weren't as spoiled. But I also have to say that, Um, everybody reacts to situations differently, but man, uh, her expressing no remorse with these other kids and saying she wouldn't have done anything differently. Well, I mean, I guess you just have to take whatever's coming down the pipeline. And I feel sorry for her husband because you know what? He's probably going to get just as bad.
Mm-hmm. Um, so, and what about the schools? Because now there are lawsuits from the parents of the
Of
kids that
course.
were killed.
Of course.
So what are your thoughts on that? Like how much responsibility the school had?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the
And
kind
when we say
of
school, are we talking about the principal or the
or the guidance counselor
yeah,
or,
who?
are we talking about the classroom teachers? I will say this, and I don't know what the perfect recipe is, but my kids both went to public schools and I we decided when the kids got to a certain age to pull them out of a large elementary school and enter them into a lottery for a smaller public charter. And I will tell you that um, I have had the teachers come to me individually and ask me if everything is okay at home or okay with the child. And it validated our reasoning for making that decision because the realization was that the teachers knew my children as individuals and not just as a kid to get through the year and to push into the next grade. And that made
Mm,
me feel really, really good. Um,
yeah.
and as it so happened, at the times the teachers approached me, the kids were going through stuff. And so it made me feel so good that we made that decision and that the teachers knew our children as people and that they were genuinely concerned about what was happening in their lives. It was such a good feeling because we all go through shit growing up, but that doesn't mean some of it isn't more serious than other stuff. So I will say in some of these gigantic schools, high schools, this boy would have been a freshman or sophomore in high school. He probably was in class with 30 to 40 kids in each class, and there was probably, 5 to 600 kids in his grade level. So we're talking about a high school of 2,000 students, roughly. Um,
Yeah.
he wasn't so much an individual, he was just a kid that got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, I really feel for teachers. There is such a in this day and age, I, I would not want that. I would not want the
I think
responsibility.
it's up there with the most dangerous jobs,
Oh
similar
God.
to the guy who has to go in the alligator pond in Texas and look for fingers and toes. I mean, seriously, I don't think you
Oh,
could pay me right now to be a teacher.
well, and they don't, that's the thing, that's the old adage of them not making enough money. It's incredible how
Right.
poorly they're paid for
Believe
all the
me,
crap they have to deal with these
bel
days.
yeah, believe me, and I believe and I support this. Those parents knew their child was in crisis.
Oh
What they
God, yeah.
did was they sent him to school and put it on the teacher's shoulders and the administrator's responsibility. And
To let it
the
be their
fact of the
problem.
matter is, yeah, they just passed the problem off to the next guy. So like nobody took responsibility, and that's what those parents did. They just handed the responsibility off to the school. Oh, they'll take care of it. It's like a daycare solution.
So unfortunately, we know this is happening just way too. I mean, that is an understatement. It just shouldn't be happening, but it is. And I'm sure every time something happens, all the schools around the country, probably the world, are looking at, are taking a hard look at their policies and procedures and what they would do, what they are going to do, or the changes they're going to make going forward,
Oh,
because
sure.
they called the parents, they called James and Jennifer, and they were like, we can't leave work, and so they left the kid in the school. Now I'm just thinking, for that school, and every school, do, do you think that they implemented I'm just thinking, as a school, if the parent is not going to pick the kid up and the teacher has found him looking for ammo on his cell phone, and he's drawing all these very disturbing images, I wonder what their options are, or were, or are going forward. Like,
Well,
can parent
most large public schools have, high schools have a resource officer, a police officer who carries a weapon and who is stationed at the school. And the resource officer deals with truancy. He deals with problem kids. He deals with kids issues like this, kids who bring weapons to school, bullets, guns, knives, you name it.
gosh.
And
So,
and a lot of schools have put in, metal detectors and have bag searches when they come in, and taking the lockers out so that kids can't store stuff, so they have to carry everything they bring from one class. I mean, there's a whole bunch of measures that have been put in place. And the thing is that,
well,
you know, again, I always go back to the pencils aren't killing the kids, the books aren't killing the kids, the teachers aren't killing the kids. You know what I mean? There's a direct thing. There's one thing that killed those four kids.
mhm.
So, I mean, I mean, to me it's very, very clear. Like, I don't have to sit around and scratch my head. We went to a volleyball tournament in a large facility this last weekend. They asked for our ticket and our ID every time we went in, and they had
Mhm.
to match. And it wasn't
So what?
because they were dying to know what my ID looked like to see if it wasn't because I was buying booze. So I think about all of the measures we're going to now to keep people safe, to keep kids safe.
Well, so let's say, with all those measures in place, he gets through, and he has the gun in his backpack, and then he's caught looking for ammo, drawing all these disturbing pictures. Obviously, the teacher doesn't know he has a gun, but they call the parents. The parents don't want to do anything about it. So, I don't know that there's most schools have a truancy officer, because I would think that that would have been the next step. I'm not like, listen, I'm not like throwing any shade at the school. I'm just talking this out. Like, everybody just sat back. It's incredible. I would be so, and I know they are so angry, the parents of the kids that were killed, because it
Oh,
wasn't
sure.
like he was flying under the radar and seemed like a healthy, kid, mentally healthy, and didn't show any. I mean, there were so many signs he was caught and everything. You know what I mean? He was caught doing these disturbing things. It wasn't like he was just like this quiet little mouse and then just came out with this, which was blindsided. Everybody was blindsided. I mean, if
And
I were those
also,
parents, I'd be
uh,
like, there was so many opportunities to stop this.
not only that, why wasn't the gun secured in a safe? Why did the kid have access to the
And
gun? You know what I mean?
that is why she is being held accountable, and
Yeah.
so will
And so that
the
comment about her leaving the gun in the car, I just don't feel comfortable with it. That's his thing. No, it was gross negligence. She got out of a car, left the gun in the car. Her husband went out later. He probably was like, "Where's the gun?" And she was like, "Oh, I left it in the car." And he was like, "Well, you're dumb." And he went out to get it, and then he brought it in and probably laid it on the kitchen table and then went upstairs smoking a cigarette. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if your child, like, if you have guns in your house, if you're listening to this and you have a bunch of guns in your house, please, for the love of God, secure the guns. Buy a gun safe. You know what? There are more, like, kill people, like, more shootings because kids like stumble on a gun laying around that's fully loaded, and they're like, "What does this do?" Bang! Oh,
right.
oh no! It's like, come on.
Yeah. Well, that's so the jury foreman spoke immediately after the trial, and she said for her it was that Jennifer was the last person um, seen with the gun. The prosecution They brought in like character assassination type stuff. She was having an affair. On cross examination, the prosecutor was like, there were two prosecutors, the female Karen McDonald and the male prosecutor, and he was asking her, so you've touted yourself as a helicopter mom, right? Like heavily into knowing what was going on in Ethan's life and all of that. And he said, but yet you spent more time on, on your with your horses. She was very into her horses and this affair and all of that. And the jury foreman was like, she was able to put that aside. Um, she knows that they were trying to say that she didn't spend a lot of time with Ethan, but for her, it was what you said just now. For her, it was that she was the last person shown with the gun.
Yeah.
Um, so she could get 10 to 15 years. And I'm trying to look up when her sentencing is, but um,
Wait, I don't understand what this affair had anything to do with it.
well, that's, when they try to bring in, just it's character assassination. They want to make her look bad, but I think in the end the jury was able to just
I
look
get
at the
so
evidence,
annoyed. Yeah, I get so annoyed when they do that because it's like also it hasn't escaped my notice. She's a woman, she's a mother. I hope they hold his feet to the fire for the same stuff. Because I don't like
Yeah,
when they try to paint her like she's supposed to be more, I don't know what, like saintly because she's a woman. She's supposed to be more less, I don't know. I mean,
yeah. Well, it's
whatever.
like what how you felt about them bringing up the fact that the other mother smoked marijuana.
Yeah.
Jennifer, yeah, so her sentencing date is April 9th, and her husband goes on trial in March, which is already next week. Um, so now I want to
Well,
hear the feedback that you got.
the sad I just want to throw out there the sad thing is this boy is 15. He's probably 16 now. Um, do I think that mentally he's fit to spend the rest of his life in prison? No. Um, he was in the midst of a mental crisis. He also was in the midst of his body and his brain growing
Hmm.
and testosterone firing off and all of the things that happen when some boys don't hit puberty until they're 14, 15, 16 years old. He was dealing with that. Who knows what kind of interactions he had had with other students. And the heartbreaking thing is now he's going to be in prison and and
Yeah.
it's not like he's going to be learning how to be a model citizen there. It's not like
Right.
he's surrounded by Barney and Elmo and Oscar the Grouch. I mean,
Well,
there's going to be no Teletubbies singing him song. And again, remember, he was in the midst of a mental health crisis. So, whatever mental health crisis he started at 15, 16 years old, he is continuing now in a place where he's surrounded by criminals. And I don't care if everybody sitting around you in prison says they're innocent. They're not, because they're all in prison. So, just remember that.
well, there
Anyway,
are some
I
people who are
reached,
wrongly convicted.
there are,
No,
but not all of them,
no,
you
no.
know?
I'm just, I'm just saying no. But it's just, you have children. You have to be responsible for them. I mean, you're responsible for them. And I know there are good parents who, their kids, I don't know, they hook up with that old saying, they hooked up with the wrong crowd. But I mean, overall, you should be invested in your kid's life, and they just sounded like they weren't. And it's just so sad because they were brought into this world because of you, and then you
Right.
can't just abandon him. They abandoned him. But earlier you said something about what's the feedback that you got? I know you talked to some
Well,
people who shall
I
remain
reached
nameless.
yeah, I reached out to some parents and I got a lot of like different responses, but they were all pretty much on the same, on the same side. And I reached out to some parents of boys, some parents of girls, and then parents with boys and girls. And, you know, um almost everybody said how scary guns are and how they don't like to see their children playing guns, you know. Even the parents of boys said they didn't like to see their boys playing guns, you know, because it it gives you it makes you feel
Promotes.
certain, yeah, makes you feel a certain way.
Yeah. So did they agree that she should have been held accountable, or do they feel like
Absolutely.
parents?
Absolutely, because even if she went through all the legal steps to obtain the gun, she it fell apart by her giving her 15-year-old son the weapon. A
Yeah, it was a
15-year-old, so yeah,
Christmas
a
gift.
15-year-old is not a gun owner. And
No,
and
it's
and then I also checked in with some other people who I even checked in with just kind of getting the feel, and the commonality was, you know, there is this big question about what kind of a parent is this? What kind of a parent does this?
yeah.
I mean, those 4 children are dead. Their families will never ever get to hug them again. They'll never get to tuck them into bed. They'll never get to take their prom pictures. They'll never get to see them graduate from high school. They'll never get to celebrate all the highs and the lows for the rest of their lives because of this
So you,
senseless act.
yes, totally senseless. That's the thing. So, I watch The Lawyer, he should like I need some payback from him because I'm always talking about him. Peter Tragos, and they were watching. He does live streams, and he was watching he was doing a live stream of, and he played back the reading of the verdict, and he'll play a little bit, and then he'll pause it, and he'll give his thoughts. I'm not hinging everything on this guy, but he felt that she should have been found not guilty. I believe that's what he said, or he thought
Oh,
that it was very tricky. Okay, let me
wow. Very
rephrase this because
hard.
I don't want any lawyer suing me. It may not have been that he thought she was not guilty. He thought that it was going to be hard. No, yes. Okay, this is what I'm saying. He thought it was going to be hard for the prosecution to get a conviction because he just thought it was, because it is unprecedented. It's the whole thing that you can't be held responsible for another person's action. That's has been the train of thought all this time, and so this is unprecedented, and so that's why the defense was kind of like, this is dangerous. It's only dangerous if you're you know you're giving your
Right.
kid who has mental health issues a gun for Christmas. You're not responding to him. You're not helping him. The school called, well, we can go over this whole thing again. But anyway, he was just from a lawyer's point of view, he was like, this is going to be really hard. And then she was found guilty. So let this be a
Interesting.
really hard lesson.
Yeah. This is I have to tell you that I have such a hard time um with this story just because of this 15-year-old 16-year-old boy. um but even though this was a heinous crime, you know what else is a crime?
What's that, Joy?
That we are out of time.
That is a crime. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. And don't complicate your day. All creativity, commentary, and opinions in this podcast belong to Cheryl and Joy. Music composed and mixed by Gabe McKeon. Logo and merch created and managed by Kevin Callan. Podcast editing and advertising by Joy McKeon. Legal representation provided by John Bojezek. Please like, subscribe, follow, and listen. You can listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, you can find us on Instagram and YouTube, and you can email us at murderandeverythingelse@gmail.com.
Bye, fishes.